I'm going to talk about your mindset. Does your mindset correspond to my data set? If not, one or the other needs upgrading, isn't it? When I talk to my students about global issues, and I listen to them in the coffee break, they always talk about we and them. And when they come back into the lecture room, I ask them, what do you mean with we and them? Oh, it's very easy. It's the Western world and it's the developing world. They say. We learned it in college. And what is the definition there? Well, definition, everyone knows, they say. But then, you know, I press them like this. So one girl said very cleverly, it's very easy. Western world is a long life in a small family, and developing world is a short life in a large family. And I like that definition because it enabled me to transfer their mindset into a data set. And here we have the data set. So you can see that what we have on this axis here is size of family, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children per woman on this axis. And here length of life, life expectancy, 30, 40, 50. Exactly what the student said was their concept about the world. And really this is about the bedroom, whether the man and woman decide to have small family and take care of their kids and how long they will live. It's about the bathroom and the kitchen. If you have soap, water and food, you know, you can live long. And the students were right, wasn't they? The world consisted here of one set of countries over here, which had large families and short life, developing world. And they had one set of countries up there, which was the Western world. They had small families and long life. And you are going to see here the amazing thing that has happened in the world during my lifetime. And then the developing countries applied soap and water, vaccination, and all the developing world start to apply family planning, and partly to USAID, who helped provide the technical advice and investment. And you see all the world moves over to two-child family and a life with 60 to 70 years. But some countries remain back in this area here. And you can see we still have Afghanistan down here. We have Liberia, we have Congo. So we have countries living there. So the problem I have is that the worldview that my students have correspond to reality in the world the year their teachers were born. And we, in fact, when we have played this over the world, I was at the Global Health Conference here in Washington last week, and I could see that the wrong concept even active people in the United States had, that they didn't realize the improvement of Mexico there and China in relation to the United States. Look here when I move them forward. Here we go. They've caught up. There's Mexico, just on par with the United States in these two social dimensions. There was less than 5% of the specialists in global health who was aware of this. This great nation, Mexico, has the problem that arms are coming from north across the border, so they have to stop there because they have this strange relationship to the United States, you know. But if I would change this axis here, look, and I would instead here, I would put income per person. Income per person, I can put that here. And we will then see a completely different picture. By the way, I'm teaching you how to use our website, Gapminder World, while I'm correcting this, because this is a free utility on the net. And when I now finally got it right, I can go back 200 years in history. And I can find United States up there. And I can let the other countries be shown. And now I have income per person on this axis. And United States only had some $2,000 at that time. And the life expectancy was 35, 40 years, on par with Afghanistan today. And what has happened in the world, I will show now. This is instead of studying history for 1 year at university, you can watch me for 1 minute now and you'll see the whole thing. You can see how the brown bubbles, which is West Europe, and the yellow one, which is United States, they get richer and richer and also start to get healthier and healthier. And this is now 100 years ago, whereas the rest of the world remain behind. And here we come, and that was the influenza. That's why we are so scared about flu, isn't it? It's still remembered, a fall of life expectancy. And then we come up, and not until independence start here. Look here, you have China over there, you have India over there, and this is what has happened. Did you note there that we have Mexico up there? Mexico is not at all on par with the United States, but they are quite close. And especially it's interesting to see China and the United States during 200 years. Because I have my oldest son now working for Google after Google acquired this software, because in fact this is child labor. My son and his wife sat in the closet for many years and developed this. And my youngest son, who studied Chinese in Beijing, so they come in with the two perspectives I have, you know. And my youngest son, who studied in Beijing, in China, he got a long-term perspective. Whereas when my oldest son who worked in Google, he should develop by quarter. Or by half year, or Google is quite generous, so he can have 1 or 2 years to go. But in China, they look generation after generation because they remember the very embarrassing period for 100 years when they went backwards. And then they would remember the first part of last century, which was really bad, and we could go by this so-called grape leaf forward. It was 1963, Mao Zedong eventually brought health to China, and then he died, and then Deng Xiaoping started this amazing move forward. Isn't it strange to see that United States first grow the economy and then gradually got rich, whereas China could get healthy much early because they applied the knowledge of education, nutrition, and then also benefits of penicillin and vaccines and family planning. And Asia could have social development before they got the economic development. So to me, as a public health professor, it's not strange that all these countries grow so fast now, because what you see here is the flat world of Thomas Friedman, isn't it? It's not really flat, but the middle-income countries, and this is where I suggest to my students, stop use the concept developing world. Because after all, talking about the developing world is like having 2 chapters in the history of the United States. The last chapter is about present and President Obama, and the other is about the past, where you cover everything from Washington to Eisenhower. Because Washington to Eisenhower, that is what we find in developing world. We could actually go to Mayflower to Eisenhower. And that we put together into a developing world, which is rightly growing its city in a very amazing way, which have great entrepreneurs, but also have the collapsing countries. So how could we make a better sense about this? Well, one way of trying is to see whether we could look at income distribution. This is the income distribution of peoples in the world. From $1, this is where you have food to eat. These people go to bed hungry. And this is the number of people. This is $10. Whether you have a public or a private health service system, this is where you can provide health service for your family and school for your children. And this is OECD countries, green Latin America, East Europe. This is East Asia. And the light blue there is South Asia. And this is how the world changed. It changed like this. Can you see how it's growing and how hundreds of millions and billions is coming out of poverty in Asia? And it goes over here, and I come now into projections, but I have to stop at the door of Lehman Brothers there, you know, because that's why the projections are not valid any longer. Probably the world will do this, and then it will continue forward like this. But more or less, this is what will happen. And we have a world which cannot be looked upon as divided. We have the high-income countries here, with the United States as a leading power. We have the emerging economies in the middle that provide a lot of the funding for the bailout. And we have the low-income countries in... Yeah, this is a fact. That's from where the money comes. They have been saving, you know, over the last decade. And here we have the low-income countries where entrepreneurs are, and here we have the countries in collapse and war, like Afghanistan, Somalia, parts of Congo, Darfur, We have all this at the same time. That's why it's so problematic to describe what has happened in the developing world, because it's so different what has happened there. And that's why I suggest a slightly different approach on what you would call it. And you have huge differences within countries also. I heard that your departments here were by regions. Here you have Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, East Asia, Arab states, East Europe, Latin America, and OECD, and on this axis, GDP, and on this health, child survival. And it doesn't come as a surprise that Africa, south of Sahara, is at the bottom. But when I split it into country bubbles, the size of the bubbles here is the population, then you see Sierra Leone and Mauritius is completely different. There's such a difference within Sub-Saharan Africa. And I can split the others here, the South Asia, Arab world. Now, all your different departments, East Europe, Latin America, and OECD countries, and here we are. We have a continuum in the world. We cannot put it into two parts.